Hello friends, I'm Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope everything is good and great and wonderful. This is a book. This is not what I intended to talk about today. I know that over the weekend I had a topic idea and I was like, oh, that's going to be a good one for Monday. I'm going to save that. Have no clue what it was. But I wanted to talk to you about a book today because, well, this is a format of a book that you might be familiar with. This is called mass market paperback. And I despise these versions of books. They're very hard to read. You have to really kind of try cracking spines. They're kind of... I have huge hands, so they're these tiny little things that are kind of hard to hold. I don't like reading these. But there are hundreds of these in my house. I don't hesitate to say that. I think there really, truly are that many books. You know, like the many, many hundreds of books that came before this is just another book in my collection. And while I very, very, very rarely read a book more than once, I never get rid of them. So if I've read a book, it's probably in my house somewhere. Totes, shelves, cubbies, piles, whatever. I own it. So this weekend I bought the Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy. Last week, I read the first book, Mistborn, The Final Empire, on my phone, and that was when I talked about wanting a Kindle. I checked it out from my library, read it on my phone, was like, oh, this is actually pretty good. I think I want to finish at least this trilogy. It's well enough that I wanted to continue. So I put the books on hold for my local library, and then went about looking for something else to read. Started reading a friend's book. Tried some other fantasy genre stuff. Didn't find anything I liked. And then this weekend I was like, you know what? I'm just going to buy the trilogy just so I can read it real quick. So I jumped on Amazon, and I think the paperback, the mass market paperback was like $22 or something for all three of them as a box set. So I bought it. And this is probably the first new mass market book that I have purchased in 20 years, maybe, something like that. I almost exclusively buy hardbacks. I like the way that hardbacks read. I like the way they stay open. I like the size. They fit my big hands better. I like everything about reading a hardback book. Sometimes I will purchase the trade size, the bigger format paperback, and they read okay too. These things are not easy to read, but it'll get you by when you just want to get through a story. The thing about it is, I opened this, this came with a 3-book set. I should have brought it down here. Just a cardboard sleeve with these 3 books in it, which is like, for one, that cardboard sleeve 3-book set, that's my childhood right there. It was like reliving a little bit of the late 80s, early 90s when there was a whole lot of trilogies coming out, packaged in those little cardboard sleeves. But number 2, I open this book and I smell it. That smell. Man, there's something about that smell. You know how they said that, like, of your senses, your smell is the one that you most easily attach memories to it? I don't have a particular memory of this smell. Like, I don't smell this and think of my grandmother or something like that. When I smell that, actually, that's not true. When I smell this, I think of Walden Books. We had Walden Books here. We had one in... every mall in this area had Walden Books, and Walden Books was... I loved going to Walden Books. And when I was a kid, my family didn't have a lot of money. My dad was a school teacher. My mom worked off and on jobs, so we really weren't wealthy. So if I wanted a book, this was all I could afford. The $7.99 or $6.99 or $8.99 mass market paperback was all I could afford. And it has a very distinct smell. And that smell has not changed since I was able to read, 8 years old or something. I don't know what makes this smell so much different from a hardback. Hardback still has a book smell, but it's a very different book smell. This smell is, I don't know, I hesitate to say cheap. That's not what it is, but it does. I have very unique memory tied to that scent of I'm getting a new book. I'm going to read a new book. You know, like I just said, we weren't wealthy, but I loved reading. I loved reading. So anytime I could afford a new book, I bought it. And when I was a kid, I would read books a lot. If you go look at some of my Dragonlance books or Lord of the Rings books or even the early Wheel of Time that came out in the early 90s, the spines on those books are destroyed because I read them over and over again because I couldn't afford to buy new books. So I would just read them. Now as I've grown, I very, very rarely revisit a book. I very rarely revisit anything. If I watch a movie, I watch it once, that's it. If I make something, I make it once, that's it. I very, very rarely revisit things. But this smell reminds me of that. It reminds me that a time in my life when this is the only thing I could afford. This was my entertainment. I didn't have video game systems. You know, I didn't have the internet to entertain me. This was what I loved to do. And I could only afford it every now and again. And so that scent reminds me of those times. I don't know. I was trying to think as I worked through this topic today, like, what other smells do I have that give powerful memories? And I don't know that there is one. I don't know that there is one that is as strong as this smell. You know, I can smell my grandfather's cologne still because he used, it wasn't cologne, it was aftershave. I forget what it's called. Blue ice or something like that. If I were to smell that, I could think of my grandfather, but it's not like, that's not like a powerful smell. It just goes, yeah, that's what my grandfather smelled like. For some reason, the smell of this book is like almost a smell of happiness for me. Like the smell of my childhood happiness is right here in this book. Really interesting. The book itself, I'm about a quarter of the way through. I just started it yesterday. It's okay. If you want to hear about Mistborn books, if you want me to do a review, let me know in the comments. I'll probably hold off until I've done the whole I've read the whole trilogy, then we'll talk about it as a trilogy, because I think that book one, I enjoyed the premise, but I think that if you it's not something that I would say read book one and then determine if you like. It's a series, right? For a reason. So if you want me to do a review on these, I will. But let me know, and I'll let you know once I've read all three of them. And let me know if you have any smells that are like attached to specific memories for you, or maybe even specific emotions. Are there smells that bring up emotions? I have a huge nose, and I get a lot of smell. Some smells give me instant headaches. You know, if we go into a craft store that's got that potpourri scent, I get a headache immediately. This does not give that to me. This just kind of makes me smile. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I will see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is cogent. It is an adjective meaning a case or argument presented in a reasoned, well thought out, logical, compelling, and persuasive manner. Corey offered a very cogent argument in favor of insider trading. Cogent. C-O-G-E-N-T. Not the same.